guys, hope you're doing well. Today we're going to continue our study of these sine and cosine curves, and we're going to start off by, we're just going to look at the 5 key points for sine x and cosine x. So those 5 key points are things you should know. Those come from the unit circle. Whenever you forget them, you can always just figure them out by looking at those quadrantal angles. I mean, we could use any points, but the quadrantals are the quickest and easiest way. So we've got the point 1, 0 right there, and 0, 1. We know this point, if we're talking about the unit circles, negative 1, 0. This point, 0, negative 1. So for y equals sine x, those 5 key points, which I know y'all know for now, those are going to be 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. And again, we could use any angle measures we wanted, but these are just some that are the easiest to work with. So going around the unit circle, we're talking about these are our angles. What's the sine value? Well, the sine value, when we're given a point like this, is always going to be the y value. So we're going to have 0, 1, 0, negative 1, 0. If we've got y equals cosine x, working our way around, x and y, 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. The cosine values, when we're given an angle, are going to always be equivalent to the x value. So we're going to have 1, 0, negative 1, 0, 1. So anytime we have this pattern where we go from 0 to 2 pi and we have these points, meaning we're going 0, 1, 0, negative 1, 0. And sometimes I'll say on, up, on, down, on. When I say on, I'm talking about on that sinusoidal axis or that midline. That means the same thing. And then for cosine, let's look at that pattern. This pattern goes 1, 0, negative 1, 0, 1. So for this pattern, we're actually up, on, down, on, up. Okay, so that's kind of a way I like to think of it. This one again, on, up, on, down, on. Okay, so when we see these 3 points the same, we're thinking sine. Whereas when we see these 2 points the same, we're thinking cosine. So when the first, third, and fifth values are the same numbers, it's a sine curve. When those second and fourth of the 5 key points are the same, that's going to be that cosine curve. All right, so now we're going to be working backwards. We've got these points. I like to write them in table form myself. So we have 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. And then the points they give us are 1, 4, 1, negative 2, 1. I'm trying to figure out, is this a sine curve or a cosine curve? If I need to graph it, I can, but look at the pattern. The pattern for sine, the first, third, and fifth are always going to be the same number. That's what's happening here. So I already know that this is going to be a y equals sine curve. I don't know much else yet because I haven't looked at it closely. The amplitude for the sine curve is going to be, what are we doing to go from here to here? So the sine curve normally has an amplitude of 1, but on this one, what are we doing? Right, we're going up 3, aren't we? So this amplitude is going to be 3. All right, let's see now. Do we have a change in the period? It's supposed to be 2 pi. We know that formula for period is always going to be 2 pi over b. Okay, that would also tell us that b is going to be 2 pi divided by the period. That's what we would get if we solved this for b. Like if we multiplied both sides by b, divide by the period, etc. But the period didn't change, did it? It's still 2 pi. So I know there's no coefficient in front of the x changing the period. So I'm just going to put an x. Then I'm also going to look, am I starting at 0 like normal? Yeah. So I'm not going to have a shift right or left. It's just going to be x. Okay, now these are supposed to be zeros, this first, third, and fifth. But if I've had a shift up or down, then that's going to change. And that's going to give me that d value, or sometimes we think of it as a k value. So this has gone up 1 unit, so I'm going to have to put the plus 1. Now, we did that kind of quick, so it's really good to check our answer if we have a calculator handy. So 3 sine x, close the parentheses, plus 1. I'll do a zoom 7 to graph it. Okay, I really don't care so much about the graph. I just want to check those 5 key points. So what I'm going to do then is I am going to go to my table of values. Right now, this table is all messed up. It's not correct based on what we're doing. So I'm going to have to change that setup. My x values are starting at 0. Oops, 0. And I am going up by pi over 2. So pi divided by 2. And now I'm going to go back to my table of values. Oh, I must not be in what? Radians, yeah. Got to make sure we do that. So when you have a calculator and you're switching back and forth a lot, you want to make sure you change that. All right, so here we go. 1, 4, 1, negative 2, 1. And so, good. That's exactly what I wanted. And so I know that that is the correct answer. All right, let's try another one. Okay, so I'm going to make my table of values. We've got 0, pi over 4, pi over 2, 3 pi over 4, and pi. That looks different, doesn't it? So we know there's going to be a change in the period that we're going to have to address here in a minute. The y values are negative 1, 1, 3, 1, negative 1. Different again, right? So last time we had the first, third, and fifth. So we were on, up, on, down, on. That's what told me it was the sine curve. Well, here we're down, up, or I'm sorry, down, on, up, on, down. So these two are the same. That tells me that it's going to have to be a cosine curve. So right now I know it's going to be y equals cosine. Okay, now look at this, guys. The cosine curve is supposed to be up, on, down, on, up. This one is down, on, up, on, down. So what does that tell me then? That a value is going to have to be what? It's going to have to be a negative to make this work, isn't it? Now the amplitude here, normally we go 1 to 0, and that tells me when I look at those two that the amplitude's 1. But here I'm going negative 1 to 1. So what is the difference in those two? Those two, right? So it's going to be a negative 2 cosine, isn't it? Okay, I'm going to look now, do I have a b value? All right, well look here, guys. We are hitting those 5 key points between 0 and pi. So therefore, the period in this case equals pi. Okay, I can use either one of these two formulas. Maybe you know this one better. So if the period is pi, I'm going to plug in the period I know is 2 pi over b. I know the period is pi. I want to know what b is. So 2 pi divided by something has to give me pi. What's b going to be? 2, right? So I know then that b is going to have to be 2x. Okay, so we got that much. Now, what else happened? Well, these second and fourth are supposed to be the same, which they are, but they're supposed to be zeros, okay? Well, they're not, so we had to have gone up 1, okay? So that's the way we're thinking of these. We've got to think first, third, and fifth the same, it's sine. Second and fourth the same, it's going to be cosine. And then whatever these numbers are, this first, third, fifth, that's our shift up. And that's our shift up there. So now let's take a look. So I'm going to put this in, and I'm going to make sure it matches up with my key points like it should. Make sure you put those parentheses in there. Those are important. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and change my window. I'm starting at 0. I'm going up by pi over 4. I'm going to check that table now. It's supposed to go negative 1, 1, 3, 1, negative 1. Okay, so we're good. Now watch, because I know a lot of you, not a lot, but some of you might forget this negative. I want to show you how that affects our table. So see, now that table is not matching up right. We've got 3, 1, negative 1. So that's, I can, if I get it wrong the first time, then I can say, okay, well, maybe I did need that negative. So I can insert it. Here's what you do. Second delete to get to the insert. Now it's flashing, and I just put in that negative. And now when I go back and check that table, now it's back to being correct again. Okay, so we're gonna have a worksheet to do over this. Make sure you work on it and that you can do all this stuff, that you can graph these, as well as go backwards when you're given the 5 key points, find the equation. All right, thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.